Sinead O'Connor, Narcissist or Empath, Part 3. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, and we continue our analysis of the life of Sinead O'Connor, who died last week, to make a determination as to what she is. A complex individual, and therefore is a very useful subject for such an examination. Returning to her memoir, she explained as follows. I was standing in Black Rock Station with my sister, after school waiting for our train. A train passed through at full speed, and a blonde boy of about 14, in a grey school uniform, opened a door on the racing train, and it grazed me on the right side of my head. I was bleeding so much that my grey school gabardine was soaked from shoulder to knee, but my sister and I just got on our own train when it came, got off at our stop, then walked up the long hill home about a mile. My mother was cross that I hadn't kept my ticket so that she could sue the train people. Notice that the immediate response of her mother isn't to check that her daughter is okay, thus demonstrating once again the absence of emotional empathy, but instead is thinking about the potential financial gain that could be obtained. You might think that her mother's response would be one of holding people to account for what had happened to her daughter, but knowing what we know about the way that she behaved and that she was quite clearly a narcissist, it was more about her looking to assert control through her daughter and seeking the residual benefit of money. The doctor came and put stitches in my head while I lay on the couch. I had very long hair. My hair was caked with blood by the time he was finished, but he said I wasn't to wash it for a month for some reason, so it got very smelly. He also said that I was to sleep in my mother's room, and she was to watch me in case I went unconscious. I had a nice time with her then. She made me a bed on the floor, and during the day when the others were at school, she taught me how to blanket stitch and made me banana milkshakes. That's why when I got back to school, I put on the fainting act, so she'd keep me home and love me. This might cause you to wonder, well, hang on a second, why would you want to be at home as a consequence of you stating that you were in a very abusive environment? However, those of you that have been ensnared by narcissists know that it isn't an unremittingly sustained period of being badly treated. There are what I describe respite periods. And this is clearly the dynamic that is occurring here, that O'Connor was being abused, given corrective devaluations by her mother, regularly and repeatedly, and the nature of them was particularly harsh. However, she would also be given respite periods where she was treated well, that she was, as she explained, taught to blanket stitch and made banana milkshakes. The narcissist is not red and tooth of claw all of the time. Also, this provides us with some very useful insight into the mind of Sinead O'Connor, where she talks about that she put on a fainting act so she'd be sent home from school, or that she'd be kept home from school and love me. She clearly did not understand that her mother was completely incapable of demonstrating any love towards her, but she wanted to experience that. That is often the behaviour of the victim of the narcissist, particularly within a familial dynamic, that notwithstanding the horrendous treatment that the child is subjected to, that they still believe that that person will show them love. And of course, when she makes her a banana milkshake or teaches her to blanket stitch, that's Sinead O'Connor believing that her mother loves her. She doesn't. It's simply a benign manipulation that's been used towards her. But like so many other victims of a familial narcissist, Sinead O'Connor is taken in by it. It's unsurprising. A further excerpt from her childhood is where she explains that she asked her mother's doctor to put her mother in the hospital because of what happened after my brother Joe ran away. She called the police and they put out an APB, all points bulletin, and he agreed to meet her near our house. She took me in the car with her, Joe got in and told her he wasn't ever coming home. She told him if he didn't, she would put me in the passenger seat of the car and drive into oncoming traffic in order to hurt me and force him to come back. Use of threat, triangulation, absence of emotional empathy. He didn't believe her, and he got out of the car and walked away. Then she did it. Put me in the passenger seat and deliberately smashed into a car that was coming the other way. Luckily, we were both okay, but I did scream at her. When we got home, I called her doctor, and he came and said that for our sakes, he would put her in the hospital. Notice that, as a consequence of that, she followed up on the threat, drove the car into an oncoming vehicle, and fortunately didn't harm anybody, but she intended to do so, showing a flagrant disregard for the safety of her daughter. O'Connor went on to explain, my siblings and I are banned from visiting my mother at the hospital. I'm glad because it means I don't have to tell her I've been fired from my job at the cafe. They found out I stole 54 pence, but they knew I'd been stealing money all along. I can't stop stealing. I got fired from the clothes shop for stealing skirts and cardigans for my mother. We all get summer and Easter jobs, mostly at the restaurants. We lie about our age. Again, O'Connor references the fact that she steals, which shows a lack of accountability and a lack of emotional empathy for those affected by her behaviour. There's also the telling of lies with regard to her age. She goes on to explain, we've been alone in the house for almost the entire summer now, without a soul checking on us since they took her to the hospital. Not even the doctor, nobody. We're having the time of our fucking little lives. The financial aspect of stealing is also expanded on, where in an interview with the Guardian newspaper, O'Connor explained that she would be coerced by her mother into participating in theft, that they would exploit charity boxes. But Marie, her mother, would greedily pocket all the donations, leaving her family in financial distress, despite her father's wealth. At collections, rather than put money on the collection plate, her mother would take it from it. O'Connor has described her mother as a kleptomaniac, pilfering even from vacant houses for her selfish gains. Only after her mother's death did the true extent of her financial hoarding come to light, revealing a sizable sum hidden away while her family lived in deprivation. Selfishness, lack of emotional empathy, asset appropriation, theft, showing a sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability for her behaviours, a lack of emotional empathy. She further explained in another Guardian interview that one evening some friends of her mother called around and she gave them dog food on toast and told them it was pâté. O'Connor explained that she had won a prize at school for rolling into the smallest ball, and the reason that she could do it was because she was so used to having the shit kicked out of her by her mother. Back in 1993, O'Connor wrote a public letter in the Irish Times which asked people to stop hurting her. She explained, if only I can fight off the voices of my parents and gather a sense of self-esteem, then I'll be able to really sing. The letter repeated accusations of abuse by her parents as a child, which O'Connor had made in interviews. Her brother Joseph defended their father to the newspaper, but agreed regarding their mother's extreme and violent abuse, both emotional and physical. O'Connor said, our family is very messed up. We can't communicate with each other. We're all in agony. I, for one, am in agony. Now, it's worth pointing out that some individuals who are narcissists will actually invent tales of abuse from their childhood. It might be that it took place and they exaggerate it, or that it never occurred, but their narcissism causes a revision of history to cause them to believe that they have been abused for the purposes of drawing sympathy from the listener and for smearing the people that they accuse them of abusing them. Remember, a narcissist does not necessarily need an abusive environment to become one. The narcissist might find themselves in an environment, what I call the grade B syndrome, where they're encouraged and told that what they've done is good, but not good enough. Every time they climb a hill, there's another hill left. So not as such direct physical, sexual, emotional abuse, but rather nothing is good enough. In some instances, a narcissist can also be formed from the fact that they live in a gilded environment. they're not able to take control over their lives. Everything's done for them. Everything's given to them. They're told that they're fantastic and brilliant at everything they do, even though they're not. And therefore, in later life, a narcissist formed that way could very readily return recounting allegations of actual physical abuse, etc., that didn't actually happen. Nevertheless, whilst it's important to make that point, the repetition of these allegations, the fact that they've been supported by her siblings, the fact that O'Connor has made mention of them in various television interviews, paper interviews, and her own memoirs, tends to suggest a level of consistency which supports that the evidence is correct, that this is what she actually was subjected to, and it is not a revision of history on her part. There's a lot more with regard to the way that she was treated in her childhood, but this paints sufficient of a picture whereby it's evident that her mother, at least, was a narcissist, and that she was subjected to a lack of control environment. This therefore raises a possibility that O'Connor has become a narcissist as a response to the abuse that she was put through, this forming a lack of control environment, and that the genetic predisposition was passed on to her by her mother. Of course, it is not determinative. It merely raises the possibility that this is what could have happened, and we will look at further evidence in the forthcoming parts to continue the analysis of what Sinead O'Connor is.